Good night to all of our viewers. Good night to the Globespan team. Let me first give credit to Devin Bissoon, our technical guy, Nohar Singh, the owner of the platform, and of course the other members of the Globespan family that works hard behind the scenes to make tonight's and every night's show a possibility. Ladies and gentlemen, what a phenomenal week it has been. Well, month it has been for Guyana. Phenomenal in terms of the following. The happenstances at GCOM makes us all wonder at how the various applications to rules and laws can be distracted by any number of factors. However, it is moments and times like today that we can stand up and talk to everyone to say, here, the law, the courts of Guyana have spoken. Colleagues, brothers and sisters from wherever you are, New York, Canada, UK, all over the world, and Guyanese at home, today's decision handed down by Madam Chief Justice Roxanne George has basically made us all sit up, and the world sitting up in admiration as to how the court can direct for simply the laws to be followed. Madam Chief Justice has made certain rulings today, which we will go through in our deliberations. And tonight we expect to be joined by a host of persons. And in studio presently, please join me in welcoming our very own, he has been with us on previous shows, a gentleman who is well adept at understanding law and who would have practiced in a number of countries, but tonight we're going to ask him to specifically put on his hat as an attorney, taking a Caribbean perspective into his stead. Join me in welcoming this gentleman from Trinidad, who hails not only and does not only serve from a business perspective, but hails from the, as I said, from the legal community, Mr. Larry Lala, an attorney at law out of Trinidad and Tobago. Sir, welcome to our program.
Dr. Mahadev, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. And good evening to your viewers all over the world, Trinidad, Guyana, New York, in England, wherever they're looking on.
Wonderful. So just before I ask you to share your opinion on what happened today, I would like to also just for a moment beg you, Mr. Lala, and our viewers, let us, if we can for a moment, turn our attention away from elections in Guyana. There is another more pressing and more serious issue. The COVID-19, as it's called in some places, coronavirus disease, has struck. We have received reports that one person in Guyana, a person who traveled, I believe, from the United States of America, has today died. So, I know, and I've spoken to quite a few health officials who are, I would hate to use the term running around, but I say so respectfully, running in terms of trying to talk to everyone, trying to get the troops, man the people together, come up with strategies and directives, well, implement strategies and directives, that they would have come up with a little while back. So while we are confident, or we should express confidence, that the health system in Guyana can deal with the threat, we need to be cognizant that there is only one true way of dealing with the coronavirus, and that is by our own lifestyle. Regardless of how we look at it, there are a number of personal hygiene practices that is extremely important. Yes, and having the personal hygiene may not necessarily stop you from coming in contact with the virus, but it will go a far way in helping you stay healthy. And the basic thing that I know a lot of us don't get to do, and tonight, Mr. Lala, let me start by saying, instead of shaking your hand, I will tell you namaste, because that way,
Namaste,
I don't have to exchange, bodily contact. The exchange of bodily fluids, friends, perspective, wash hands with soap and water as constantly as you have been in contact with anyone or anything. When persons sneeze and cough, it can bring out aspirating that vapor. And if anyone is in close contact with you while doing that, it can affect you. I'm not saying that it is time for panic. It is time to be mature. Please let us be aware that already reports are being shared around that we have had one death in Guyana due to the coronavirus. Mr. Lala, how has there been any such reports in Trinidad that you might have been aware of?
Well, today there was a bit of a scare, although there is no confirmation. There was broadcast on Canadian television yesterday a report that someone from Alberta was diagnosed with the virus, and that he or she, they have not revealed the sex of the person, had been in Trinidad at some point in time. I was in contact via Facebook with a friend of mine who lives in Alberta, and it just so happens he lives on the same street as the person, and he indicated that the person was in fact in Trinidad for Carnival. Now, the point is there are no direct flights from Trinidad to Alberta, so the person could have theoretically contracted the virus from any point along his journey. So there's no confirmation that there is the virus in Trinidad, although there is cause for concern, and one would hope that the authorities are conducting the relevant investigations.
Dr. Yog, we're not hearing you.
To our viewers out there, let us be sure that we are aware that the virus is there, and we all have to take precautions. And to that point, let me also share with you that we have been reached out to by some teams. I think there is a Pagua Parade 2020, Pagua Parade of New York, that was scheduled for Sunday, March 22nd at the Smoky Oval Park. Please be informed that that parade is postponed until further notice. We have not been informed as to the reason for that postponement, but please heed that postponement public service announcement. So viewers out there and brothers and sisters across Guyana, we need to be extremely careful. The first case of coronavirus is confirmed in Guyana. The tests that have been carried out on the woman who died at Georgetown Hospital has returned positive. We expect the health ministry to be making a statement very, very soon. And I'm sure that if the statement happens while we're having this broadcast, we will cut over to that statement. We expect the president to also address the nation, hopefully in short order, and we will also hope that we can join them if that happens while we're on program. So that is an unfortunate thing that has happened today. And we certainly would want to ensure that all of our brothers and sisters are healthy. We have also invited the health ministry and health officials to please join us if they can and when they can to talk about the virus. So let us move on with the rest of the program. Tonight we want to discuss the court case, the decision of Madam Chief Justice Roxanne George in handing down. And Mr. Lala, if I may, sir, just briefly outline for our viewers, précis or summarize what was said today. Here is what. One, that the declaration made on March 5th, 2020 by the returning officer for District 4 was unlawful. It is in breach of Section 84(1) of the Act. It is null, void, and of no effect. Mr. Lala, I know sometimes the superlatives in legal reasoning, there tend to be a lot out there, but I don't think there was any fluff here. This is as plain as legal language can be.
Absolutely. She was very, very clear in communicating that our declaration, since the statutory procedure was not followed in arriving at that declaration, it was null, void, and no effect. In other words, in law, it does not exist. And she made the declaration accordingly.
Correct. And thus her order number 2 even punctuates it better, that the declaration is vacated and set aside. Your comments, sir?
Yeah, correct. I mean, she had to do that. I mean, the problem that GCOM found itself in is that there was an evidential lacuna in the affidavits that they presented to the court. In that while they were saying that there was substantial compliance, that is what Mr. Boston was arguing. His argument was that GCOM substantially complied with 84.1, and therefore the declaration should stand. But they did not provide the evidence to show how they went from the time that the presiding officer went to the hospital to the time the declaration was arrived at. There was not sufficient evidence to show the process that was followed in arriving at that declaration. And therefore she was saying missing from the evidence was how and the methodology used to deal with 458 SOPs. And therefore, if you have not provided the court with that evidence to show how you dealt with those 458 SOPs, then you cannot say, you cannot credibly argue that you substantially complied with Section 84.1 of the Representation of the People's Act. And therefore, the declaration had to fall, which it did by her order.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And viewers, just for us to understand some of the background stuff, the evidence that would have been presented for consideration of Chief Justice Madam Roxanne George, she quite rightly admonished both sides for not taking up the court's time as much as taking up the nation's time, because the nation awaits. And Mr. Lala, I must say that this upholder of the law, Madam Chief Judge, she stands up heads and shoulders above all, because consistently from the beginning to now, she keeps saying to them, the nation awaits us, let's move it on. And she worked all weekend, a holiday weekend, mind you, to ensure that this thing can be pushed.
Yeah, I think Guyana and all Guyanese, and certainly all persons who are looking at this election with interest, the international community in general is looking on, they would have felt proud and satisfied by the way the Chief Justice conducted herself in this matter. From day one, she was very measured. She chose her words very carefully. She cut to the chase, presented the issues clearly in the way, importantly, I think, that the common man would understand what she was saying. She went to great pains to ensure that whatever she said, everyone would understand, not just the lawyers. So there wasn't, any quote-unquote legal mumbo-jumbo. It was broken down, presented in very clear, concise English, so that the country as a whole could understand. And I think people must feel proud of the court system for what happened today and for the way that the Chief Justice handled the matter.
Yeah, Mr. Lala, I don't know if you would have. I mean, I know you are very busy. I don't know that you might have had time to listen to the details of the evidence presented. But in the affidavits, I think one of the flaws that came up was that the affidavits presented by GCOM personnel, they basically contradicted each other in some material way. So, for example, when Mr. Mingo was taken to the hospital, when he became ill, and he left, or it is felt by GCOM that the persons who thereafter undertook the process were persons of, he had a right to choose whoever he wants to do so. However, the affidavits of the other persons also indicated that they left their post too, you know.
Yeah.
So he was saying that he left it to them. They were saying, well, we had to leave it too, you know, we had to do our stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the key thing was that the judge did not allow it to just go by. She pounced on it and pointed it out.
Yeah, because at the end of her judgment, she said that one of the important things that GCOM must stand for is transparency and impartiality and fairness. And therefore, having regard to the way the evidence was presented, she wanted to communicate to GCOM that, look, you know, you're not coming up to scratch here. You have a very important function to perform for the entire country. You must be seen as an impartial referee between all of these fighting parties. And importantly, people must have confidence in what you're doing so that when the results are announced, there could be no question marks attached to it. And people could walk away thinking and believing that they had exercised their vote in a free and fair process on March the 2nd. And therefore, you know, the way the GCOM went about presenting its evidence left a lot to be desired. I think it left a bitter taste in the mouth of the judge because much more is expected of GCOM, especially where it is chaired by a former senior judicial officer. So you would expect that things to be put in place to ensure that they cross all their T's, they dot all their I's, and they operate the election system in a way that maintains confidence in the system. And that was lacking, and she pointed that out.
Yeah. So to our viewers out there, we have Mr. Lala with us in studio. We are expected to be joined by Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin shortly, and a few others over the duration of our tonight's show. So yes, the decision was made, and the injunction, the orders that were made by the court boil down to one thing, that GCOM has to comply with the law. It's something that should have been done in the first place.
Yeah, she said the issue was very narrow. She started off by saying that there's a very narrow issue to be decided, and that is whether GCOM complied with Section 84.1. And the onus for proving that lay with GCOM, because as a creature of statute, and therefore you must show and you must satisfy everyone that you complied with the statute.
Great. Let me welcome Mr. Derek Arjun. He could not have joined us in studio tonight. I know he is busy. Mr. Arjun, good night. How are you, sir?
Mr. Mahathir, how are you, Yog? As usual,
I'm very well, thanks. I think I'm very well, thanks. Well, we have good news and bad news. The coronavirus has struck in Guyana. We have one person who has died today. So that's the bad news. The good news is that the law continues to look good for Guyana. What's your thoughts of the court case today, sir?
Well, I agree with that overall assessment, in that I believe that the Chief Justice exercised prudence and good sense in her decision, in holding that the process was not completed, even though I think Boston made a sturdy and almost convincing argument that it was substantial. She nevertheless found that it was not substantial enough to comply with it was 804.1, I think it was, and said that we need to complete the process, and pursuant therefore ordered that I think it's beginning 11 tomorrow, that he begins either where he left off or counts again. I think this is a monumental decision in our history. I believe it beckons well for democracy, the core of which is voting by our citizens. And while I've said before that I would have preferred her not to entertain jurisdiction, she having entertained jurisdiction made a decision that we all could live with. And importantly, I believe at the end of this all, Guyanese, regardless of their political stripe or inclination, could feel satisfied that the judiciary stepped in and ensured that the Constitution, as it pertained to the operation of GCOM, was fulfilled. So I think tomorrow, at the end of all of this, Guyana will be at ease.
Right. So, Mr. Arjun, quick question for you. I mean, I am aware of a lot of legal personnel, and you yourself having practiced law, a lot of legal personnel have seemed to feel that strongly, notwithstanding the case today, but they feel that Madam Chief Justice might have opened a door, creating a floodgates, if it were, in terms of allowing a two-step process, so that in the future, as soon as there is any little thing, people can cry foul and ask the court to intervene.
Yeah, I think that's a danger that we might have plunged into, and the peril of parties or citizens crying foul and seeking judicial intercession does in fact exist. I think she took pains to talk about compliance and how compliance must be done, but I'm not sure that would prevent the many suits that could arise in the future if and when parties feel aggrieved by the electoral process. So yes, I believe that it's a plunge, a dangerous plunge, and let's hope that we're able to manage whatever comes in the future effectively and sensibly.
Okay. So, sir, here's another question for you. And Mr. Lal, I'm sorry, I'm going to come to you just now again. Mr. Arjun, here is another question for you. In terms of the applicability, in terms of the compliance with the orders now, I mean, look, regardless of how we term it legally, the judge basically told GCOM, go back and comply with the law. Isn't it so, sir?
Well, yeah, I mean, isn't that what the applicants were seeking?
Yes.
They were seeking GCOM's compliance with the law. If the question you're asking, and permit me if you will, if you're asking, can you trust GCOM to comply with the law, then the suit should not have been brought at all, because implicit in the suit was this belief that if you had GCOM comply with 804 as set out in its provisions, then we could have a result that was fair, credible, and that Guyanese could live with.
Okay.
So we can't have it both ways. We can't say we're going into court seeking redress, and at the same time saying that the redress, that the path to redress is nonetheless flawed, because the very body from which you're seeking redress is tainted and corrupted.
But the order also, it doesn't tie GCOM's hands down to follow any stipulated thing other than 841. In other words, it basically tells the RO that, listen, you can tabulate it however you want, but ensure that the tabulation is done in front of the people who are authorized to be there.
Well, I don't know if I would be that cavalier about and say that how you want. He does have discretion. He is a public officer. He is a professional. There are some ways of tabulating. Use SOPs, and you also use a spreadsheet, and then you also have officials around who are also charged with doing the right thing. So the RO is not vested with unfettered authority to do what he wants. He is constrained by decency, the oath of his office, and those who are present that will voice objections if he's doing something untoward or wrong.
Yes.
And because of those constraints, I would expect that what he does tomorrow does in fact conform with the law.
So, Mr. Lala, I want to just quickly turn back to you on that same point. Look, viewers are concerned that you have said to GCOM, go ensure you're compliant with 84.1 and other surrounding pieces of relevant legislation. GCOM, in the first place, believes in its heart that it has complied. What definitive striking statement you see there in that judgment that will make GCOM deviate from what it did a couple days ago?
Well, I think the most important thing is the Chief Justice's constant reference to transparency and credibility of the process. She made reference to Section 83(9) capital A. That is where at the polling station the statement of the polls is posted in a conspicuous place. And I think that she did that very early in her judgment. And that set the tone for the message that she wanted to communicate. That is, in this day and age, where the courts are available to bring scrutiny to bear on the conduct of public officers, transparency is very important. And I would disagree in a small way from what Mr. Arjun has said, that the jurisdiction decision which was rendered on Sunday is a plunge. I don't see it like that. I see it as a victory for transparency. And it could only operate to the benefit of, because now the message has been sent to GCOM that, look, if during the Section 84 process, 84.1 process, you are not transparent in your operations, you are not complying with the law, there is a remedy available to the parties who have contested the election to go to court and to put you right. And I think, if anything, that should, under normal circumstances, encourage GCOM at all times to ensure that its actions could stand up to scrutiny. And I think that is very important. I'm one who is all in favor of increased transparency in the operations of all public offices, because these offices are held on trust for the public, and the public must at all times feel confident that you are doing what you are supposed to do. And they wouldn't get that confidence merely because you say you are doing what you're supposed to do. They wouldn't get that confidence merely because you say you have been substantially compliant with the Act. They will get that confidence if they and their representatives see that you are complying with the Act. And I think that is why that decision is very, very important for the history of Guyana and for future elections to come.
Right, thank you. Mr. Arjun, I know that you're busy, and we are also thankful that you could spare some time to join us. What are your final thoughts, sir, before we let you go?
Well, I want to look at this decision more carefully. But to my esteemed colleague, um, you have to be mindful of the particular or peculiar facts here, and that is a certain amongst of boxes that had been counted, a certain amount of SOPs had been gone over, and there was an interruption. Nevertheless, the RO went up and declared a result. That sequence of events, the Chief Justice found to be unacceptable. She found it to be out of compliance. And so you have a situation where you have a particular set of facts that dictated this outcome. The question to me is whether, when you don't have these harsh facts, so to speak, do you nevertheless allow the court to intercede into the business of GCOM? I mean, lawyers like to say hard cases make bad law, and I recognize the sound thinking of this Chief Justice throughout her decision. But I'm also mindful of the particular circumstances here that might have impelled her to say this process needed to be completed. What about other cases where people are saying, boxes are missing, SOPs are not looked at, and this is why I say it's a plunge, and I'm not sure we have enough direction here because of the peculiar facts here to say that that we might not be going down a perilous path. So I will say in closing that it's a monumental decision. I applaud the Chief Justice, but going forward, we have to be careful that we're not stepping on the toes, so to speak, of an important constitutional body, GCOM. And with that, Yog, I did say that I would like to do this tomorrow because of my circumstances, and I look forward to further discussion tomorrow. The best to you, and Mr. Lal and Yog again. I congratulate you in calling for peace and adherence to the national interests in this rather troubling period in our history.
Mr. Sergeant, thank
with that, I would say good night.
Good night.
Good night, Sergeant.
We'll talk again. Okay?
Good night, and thank you once again.
And Mr. Lal, same. Have a good night. Take care.
Thank you.
So just to remind you viewers, we are hoping to be joined by Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin in a couple of moments. We have in studio Mr. Lala from Trinidad, who has given us his insight on the judge's decision today. To remind those of you who joined us, and let me say give a special welcome to our viewers from the United Kingdom, from England basically. We also have a viewer joined us from Ireland. We have viewers from Trinidad, USA, Canada, and across the Caribbean, and of course in Guyana. Welcome to all of you. And to let you know, those of you who joined us late, yes, it is confirmed that Guyana has had one fatality so far with regards to the coronavirus. We have had one death today at the Georgetown Public Hospital. We expect the Ministry of Health to make a statement very soon, and we have heard that the President will also be addressing the nation. I would like to share some other information with you, Mr. Lala, and with our viewers.
Yes.
CARICOM, the heads of CARICOM have also come into the country. They have come here today. They have been in meeting during today with the president. They have also been in meetings with the political parties who have contested the elections. I know that as of this evening, they were in meetings with a number of the parties, and so we're looking ahead to see what they would have to say to. But Mr. Lala, I think that the entire world except Trinidad and Tobago, except the governments of Trinidad and Tobago, the entire world has basically called on Guyana, like we have on this platform. There is only one thing we are asking for, and that is follow due process. The issue here is not about celebrating the winner or loser. The issue is follow process. Let me welcome Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin. Sanjeev, welcome to our program.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Good night to your listeners.
Good night to you. And we have shared with our viewers both the bad news and the other news. I wouldn't say whether it's good or bad because depending on which side of the political platform people are sitting. But we are very concerned with the coronavirus, having had one fatality in Guyana, and we hope everybody's okay out there, especially you guys who are in the face of everyone and meeting everyone, Sanjeev. But let's get on to the case, sir. What are your thoughts? We just had Mr. Arjun. He left us, had to go look after some business. What are your thoughts and your immediate reaction to the decision by Madam Chief Justice?
Well, the essence of what she did is the declaration that Mr. Mingo purported to make. She struck that down. She said all consequential declarations, which would have been Lowenfield's report, etc. She's vacated all of them. So the process starts from the beginning now. We have to go back to the verification. It is up to the RO whether he wants to do the verification, continue from 421, or he wants to restart and do them all.
Okay.
So that's the process.
Yeah.
She did say that he must do it in the presence of people, and she did say he had to do it from the statement of polls. So that being so, I have seen that the lawyers that were involved, that were representing GCOM, Mr. Ford was there, gave an interview. He was with the team with Mr. Boston, and what he was saying is that it means the verification process doesn't have to happen in the presence of the people who are prescribed by statute. That's not true. That's clearly not what was said in the judgment.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, and also, Mr. Dattadin, I know that I'm going to put you on a spot to probably speak in terms of probabilities, but many persons have expressed concerns that what about the status, for the lack of a better word, of the boxes, the confidentiality, the trust, everything over the past couple of days of the SOPs and the boxes themselves?
Well, the boxes themselves, as I understand it, are in locked containers at 6 or 7 locations around the country, and there have been volunteers from both parties keeping an eye on the boxes. So there is no,
right.
As far as going into the boxes are preserved. There is great...
So the integrity of the boxes are more or less preserved?
Yes, but there is great anxiety about what is going on with the SOPs. Now, on Thursday, when an armed group of the Tactical Service Unit came and evicted everyone from the building, we've not had access, no one has had access to those statement of polls since. We don't know what has happened to them. We don't know if they've been interfered with. And that has not happened since 1992. It's simply, I mean, there are persons in the government media and on the government television channels saying the process was hijacked by people who were being unruly. That's a false narrative. They keep repeating it, and maybe they believe if they repeat it enough, it was true. I was there all the time. The only time objections arose is when it was Mr. Mingo was using a spreadsheet. He has to use the statement of polls and tally it. And he has to do that tallying in the presence of the people that are there. He can't do it somewhere else and then bring it. That's not what the law says. He has to ascertain the statement of polls by adding it up. And it says he has to ascertain it in the presence of people who are specified in Section 86. Section 86 specifies candidates, members of GCOM, and in the next category is any person who he would deem would have a right to be there, but those would be the international observers. The international observers are accredited by the government and GCOM.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a right to be there.
So
These are the things that had to happen. So it wasn't hijacked.
Right.
People were very, when he came to use a spreadsheet, they objected. When he sought to make a declaration. Now the question that has to be asked is, why when you were doing it by going through statements of polls one at a time, that you decided to stop and use a spreadsheet? And when you didn't use a spreadsheet, it was agreed by all, and they swore affidavits, that's evidence in the case, that they agreed to go back to the statement of polls. They did a total of 4 more, and then said they were tired, and then the next day, when we were supposed to resume that process at 9 a.m., Mr. Mingo, nobody showed up. And at 2 p.m. on that day, when no further verification took place, he proceeded to make a declaration.
Right.
Those are fantasy figures. Those figures have no bearing on reality.
Right. So, Mr. Dattadin, here is a hypothetical question. I know you're a man of law, so hypotheses probably, but here is a hypothetical question. Now, what if a returning officer in question stands up tomorrow at 11 and proceeds to use SOPs that contradicts completely with what the other parties have? Is there anything that can be done to have them not go ahead with that and make a declaration in front of you? You are there and they're allowing you to be there, but they just proceed with any figures and then proceed. Is there anything that could stop that?
Well, it is that whatever objections you make, you can't stop. That's what the judge was saying. But he has to at least let you be able to verify the SOPs that he's reading from. He has to at least show you that these are genuine SOPs. The SOPs all have security features and watermarks that the personnel, the commissioners in GCOM know what they are. There are some only visible by UV light, that blue light, and there are various ones. Surely they have to be able to ascertain that those documents are in fact what they are. The serial numbers on those documents must match. It doesn't mean that he could simply read from anything he wishes. When the legislation says, and this is what I don't understand by what is being spewed in the government media, when they said that he must do it from the SOPs, it must actually be established that he's doing it from the SOPs. These are such preposterous arguments that are being raised. I mean, Mr. Ford was there. There are all kinds of issues being raised. Mr. Ford is there as an integral part of the team representing the commissioners and the returning officer, and he's a candidate. He is a candidate for the APNU AFC ticket. How could that be? These things are ridiculous. So was Mr. Darren Wade. These things are preposterous. They couldn't be tolerated in a civilized society. But these are the things that are going on, and this is not secret. Mr. Ford and Mr. Wade walk out of the courtroom in front of all the cameras and give interviews.
Right.
So how surprising is that? But the point is, they have been saying, and they have been repeating in the media repeatedly, that it means he can do anything he wants. But there must be a better agreement. Hopefully, with the CARICOM leaders here, there will be an agreement that you count the ballots. You have to be able to determine the will of the people. And you can't subvert it with technicalities and tricks.
Right.
Count the ballots. Open the ballot boxes and count it.
Correct.
There's
So,
no reason to believe that that will give you an incorrect result.
right. So we have also in studio, Mr. Dattin, we have Mr. Lala, who, as you may know, he is an attorney from Trinidad and Tobago. And before I invite both of you to interact in terms of the following statement, GCOM made a release, a brief text this afternoon, saying as follows, quote, in light of the CJ's ruling today, please be advised that the office of the returning officer will be open from 9:30 tomorrow morning. The process will commence at 11 hours. Any comments there?
Yes. I can't see, but is your guest Sanjeev Lala?
No, it's
or
Larry.
Lala?
It's Larry Lala.
Larry Lala.
How are you?
How are you doing, Larry? I went to school with Sanjeev Lala. That's
Yeah, I
why
know.
Yeah.
But tell me something.
The difficulty. Yes.
Tell me something. The international observers who were there on the 2nd and the days following, are they still all there in Guyana?
To the best of my knowledge, they are. They were even present in court. I've seen various representatives from the various missions that were here present in court. I have spoken to a few who had indicated that they were going to remain in Guyana until the entire process is complete.
Well, I think that is very important, and it's very comforting to know that they see, the important role they play in finishing the process and staying in Guyana until it's done.
Well, yes, but if what you are going to promulgate is that you could just do any process you choose, that it's your discretion to do as you feel, and you promulgate that among your supporters, you're clearly going to take a view that's aligned to that, and then your supporters are going to ensure, as they did today, gather in large crowds outside the court or the place where the GCOM's office, and they're going to say, well, that's allowed. But the truth is that's not allowed.
Yeah, I would really hope.
The absolute attempt to subvert at every stage this process is unbelievable. I never thought this day would come. Not in my lifetime and in front of my eyes.
For all observers looking on at the process as it unfolded while the count was going on, I mean, people were startled that in this day and age, that could be happening. And luckily, number one, the international observers were there. And thank God for social media in this day and age that the word was able to be spread far and wide as to what was happening. And I think largely because of that, you had the international voices coming to bear on the situation and express their very, very deep and troubling concern about what is happening.
Well, I hope that what will happen with the visiting CARICOM mission, I have seen statements from Prime Minister Mia Mottley and other prime ministers in the region that have said that the will of the people should be respected and you should go back to the ballot boxes. But the process as envisaged is there will be this public tabulation depending on what's on the statement of polls. I am sure that Mr. Mingo is not going to turn up tomorrow. They're going to send someone else because Mr. Mingo is not going to go down that sort of a road. We understand that the indications are that, he wouldn't do that. He doesn't have the fortitude to do something like that. He would go by the rules, more than what we would expect to be the rules. But surely, my guess is they're going to have someone there who will do it, who will simply have the wherewithal to ignore everything else and just do what they're doing. Now, so the process will become farcical. Because if they're saying it's discretionary and they could do it any way they choose, I am sure that those in government are going to impress and persuade and cajole those people to do what they want. So the struggle of making sure that it happens will then go to the next stage where a counting agent will have to request that there be a recount.
A recount, yeah.
And
So,
that recount has to happen before the declaration is made.
right.
And when that recount is made, the way to do the recount is you don't go back to adding up statement to polls under section 84(2) of our act. You have to go to the ballot boxes. You have to open the ballot boxes in the presence of everyone, and it has to be recounted in everybody's presence. Now, the APNU, they requested recounts in Region 5 and 6, and they were ongoing. They commenced, and then they chose not to pursue it anymore because there'd been a declaration essentially that they were the winner because Region 4 was unlawfully declared. So they didn't pursue any of that. But we are sure they're going to raise all kinds of fanciful issues. I hate to be able to foresee what happens. This is one time I wish that I'm not predicting correctly, but what we expect will happen is they will raise frivolous objections to the counting agents and say you're not properly appointed, you're not able to make this request. We expect that that will be the next step to stop and going to the ballot boxes. What I am hoping, this is my personal hope, I don't really have knowledge of what discussions are going on with the visiting prime ministers from CARICOM, but my hope is that they reach to an agreement to the effect that they will allow a recount, which is provided, it's mandatory under our law. The first request for a recount is mandatory. It is only second and subsequent requests that are discretionary, but they will allow a mandatory recount once it's requested, and they wouldn't raise frivolous objections or technical objections about whether the people are entitled to request such an objection, because my guess is that's what they'll tell the other parties. You didn't word it correctly, your person is not on our list of people. I'm sure that's what will happen.
So, Mr. Natadin, what happens, what about the 15 days then? I mean, we're already gone past maybe day 9, I think.
9,
yeah. There is an abundance of case law around the world that the 15 days, wherever a time limit in anything to do with this process, wherever a time limit is set out in the legislation, it is not mandatory, it is directory, meaning that non-compliance with it is not fatal.
Oh.
So there is provision, and the courts certainly can extend the timeline, and upon an application, or even if the application was done outside of the timeline, it does not vitiate what the result is that you're going to declare. So although it is a guideline that is very firm about the time within which it must be done, going past the 15 days is not fatal.
Right. Okay. And what you're already, sir, you're on the PPP's list of candidates, right?
I am.
Yeah. What confidence you have that the next 2 days will see the right thing happen for your party? And I'm not talking about declaring a winner, but in terms of the process.
Well, I think that if the statement of polls have not been interfered with, and those are the statement of polls with the serial numbers, and the numbers have not been fiddled, and they have the security features, then wherever it ends up, that would be fine. In terms of my confidence that will be a smooth process happening, I don't know how smooth it would be. I think it's going to have its ups and downs, because you could clearly see that there was an attempt repeatedly to undermine and to hijack the process. To blame the people who are in the building for objecting to a man breaking the law is not hijacking the process. If he was doing the job that the law prescribes he should do, that the state, that GCOM gives money to the state to pay him to do, then we'd have no difficulty.
Right. Right. Okay. And I would want your comment, if you can, Mr. Dattinin, edify our viewers with regards to the, Mr. Lala quite rightly pointed out at the top of the program that Madam Chief Justice mentioned on more than one occasion the words transparency, in the interest of transparency. But the words that she would have used is that taking in consideration the need for urgency, the returning officer or DRO is to decide whether the process of ascertaining the total votes cast in favor of each list, it basically puts it back into his court to decide, right?
Well, he would have the process of ascertaining. He has to do it with the SOPs, and he has to say what the position is. But the ascertaining part is he may ignore objections that his figures are incorrect. He may ignore, he may just choose to say that he's not going to address them. That's what that would be. But you see, what was missed out is in the very early part of the judgment, if you listen to her, she said that under 83, section 83(9)(a), that when there is a dispute, conclusive proof of what was the count at the polling station is what's posted outside. So I do know that the PPP have taken pictures of nearly all of those polls that were posted outside.
Yeah,
now, the returning officer can't ignore that. The 859 or how much ever pictures are taken, he can't ignore that, because the law says that's the conclusive proof. We saw on social media yesterday a gentleman who has been ripping down polling, the statements of poll posted around the city. His picture was taken, his name was given, it was circulated widely on social media. But that was started yesterday after the arguments concluded, because what was realized is that 83(9)(a) is very clear. If you have a statement to poll, and I have a statement to poll, and the RO have a statement to poll, the law says the one that's conclusive evidence is the one that's on the building.
Okay. Well, that's very clear.
So,
and I noticed, Mr. Dattinin, that you officially, you're named on the document as one of the persons for the applicant, right?
I am one of the attorneys, yes.
Here is the reason I asked that. If we can for a moment forget the horrible couple of days you've had of your life last week, how has the past 2-3 days been for you and your team?
Well, it's been, I tell you, there's one thing that I can tell you. If you've been, I haven't seen it, but I am reminded constantly by my wonderful wife that I'm smoking too much. Coffee has been the staple, and little or no sleep, because there's so much to get done. But I mean, that's not unique to me. That's a lot of us have been in that position. Because the thing is, that, for example, to give you an example of how it works, the judge has crunched the timelines for things to be done. When the timelines are crunched, it's all well and good that we turn up in court and all our pleadings are filed and our submissions are made and our cases are researched. But those things don't happen magically. We didn't turn up with them in that state without having gone through it and spent hours doing the research, doing the write-up, doing the things that are involved. So the end product is what really the public sees. What goes into the production of that end product is quite substantial. And I mean, this process was entirely uncalled for, and that's my personal view. I thought it was very straightforward what the law was. It was very straightforward that Mr. Mingo needed to do those SOPs in the presence of people, and that was a very clear thing. I mean, it was as simple as 33 being half of 65, but we saw what happened with that.
Right.
And these things are, I mean, they are totally repugnant to the functioning of a society, a fair society, a civilized society. I mean, I don't know whether it's been known. I mean, I know of it because I'm in the courts. So, do you know, this government makes some startling decisions. I mean, the abuse of executive power has been accused a lot. But you know, yesterday, a judge has struck the pardon, the supposed pardon that was issued in favor of Mr. Jordan. That you remember, there was a contempt proceeding, and he was to go to prison.
Yes.
And the president purported to pardon him while the appeal is being heard, when the court had not given that stay of execution on the sentence.
Okay.
And a high court judge yesterday struck it down because it is interference with the judiciary.
Exactly.
While the judiciary is, if you make an application and you get contempt, and the stay of execution process is going on, how could the president interrupt it and issue a pardon? The process is not finished. And you can't issue a pardon until the appeal is heard. That's the executive impinging upon the role of the judiciary.
Right.
And the judge quite rightly said exactly that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Sanjeev and Mr. Lala, we are joined by Mr. Senior Counsel, Mr. Ralph Ram Quran. Sir, how are you?
Good, fine, thank you.
All right. What's your reaction to today's decision from the CJ?
Well, I'm very happy, but you know, I doubt whether there is any other decision she could have arrived at, because the returning officer, Claremont Mingo, had clearly violated Section 84 of the Representation of the People Act. So I don't think she had an alternative. But you know, in Guyana's context, judges sometimes find alternatives. But it's to her great credit that she gave a decision that accorded with the facts and the law before her.
Right. Mr. Ramkaran, we have Mr. Lala, attorney from Trinidad and Tobago, in studio, and we have Mr. Sanjeev Dattidin on the line too.
Yeah, gentlemen.
Good evening.
We have been discussing a number of things pertaining to the case today. Sanjeev has brought to light quite a number of interesting paradigms from which we can examine what's happened today. I would like, if we can have a little discussion, because viewers have sent in this question. You know, I mean, you three gentlemen are legal expert. You have your legal expertise. People out there don't. So, in terms of the judge saying that, and Sina, I want to start with you. In terms of the judge saying that the injunctions, I think except for one, they're all in place. Kindly, if you don't mind, explain to the viewers how that ties GCOM to what does it force GCOM to do?
The first one says that they could make no they're restrained from making a declaration except by observing Section 84. The second one prevents any declaration being used by the CEO that is not in accordance with Section 84. The one she didn't continue, which was that they must obey the letter and spirit of the Section 84. Even yesterday, Douglas, Senior Counsel Mendez, had said that the letter and spirit, to put that in an order, to put spirit in the order, is a very wide term and would not usually be in in an order because the enforcement would be difficult. What does the spirit of the law of it mean? But he also felt that if you say that you can't do anything save and except to Mingo can't do anything save and except in compliance with 84, and Lowenfield couldn't do anything to declare unless Mingo had complied with Section 84, that those were quite clear. And those orders remained, which is really the crux of it. The letter and spirit was just a general overlap of all of that. But what has to happen is Section 84 has to be complied with, and she's given some guidance that he can decide whether he wants to restart the process or continue, and he can decide if there are discrepancies, what he would do. If their numbers are different from the...
Let me interject and ask this, and I want to come first to you, Mr. Ramkrant. What's your feel with regards to that open door that the RO has a choice? He could either restart the process or continue. What's your party and probably your legal position on that?
Well, that's all right. I don't see a problem with that. I do see a problem when she said that that he has some kind of discretion in the manner in which he's to proceed. That was saved, of course, later on when she said he has to comply with 84. That is to say that he has to count the votes from the statements of poll. So it's a bit of a contradictory. It leaves a lot of. It leaves some loose ends, which I really couldn't figure out what she was saying. I don't know if Sanjeev noticed that she said that she leaves the returning officer with a discretion as to how he is to proceed. But then later on she said he must proceed in accordance with Regulation 84. That was my only problem. It's not a big problem because she eventually said that he must comply with Section 84.
Okay. Mr. Lala, you would have heard these two senior men in Guyana deliberate over this process. What's your thinking, especially from a Caribbean perspective?
Well, I agree with Senior. The discretion which is left in the hands of the returning officer is cause for concern. But I think what the judge was pointing at, he said that Section 84(1) could have been worded a lot better, could have set out in clearer, more precise terms what is to be done when the quote-unquote verification exercise is ongoing. But from a Caribbean perspective, I think what would be more important would be to see what happens tomorrow at 11 a.m. when they start, because the entire world, the region, is looking on to Guyana to make an assessment of what is the level of maturity of the public officers in Guyana, and whether they understand their role which has been given to them by law. And I mean, apart from what is set out in the law, how ready are they to operate in a fair and transparent manner? Having regard to everything that has happened over the last week, and all those comments, all those words of guidance given by so many people internationally, everyone's looking to see what GCOM would do next. And I think it's very important for Guyana. It's very important for GCOM to get it right and what they're doing and to be preserved in the system as much as it can be.
Okay. Mr. Datadin, I know that a little while back, I'm not really asking you to comment on the gentleman, even though I think I know a little bit of your thoughts here. You have been expressive in the past. But a little while back, Mr. Basil Williams, we have a video, I think, that I wanted to show to the viewers. In 2015, Basil Williams, he's on record saying, use the statements of poll and follow the verification process. So here it is that a couple of years ago, the same gentleman has demanded that the system allow the and the verification process. And today, his party has been more silent in terms of calling on GCOM to follow the process. Your thoughts, Mr. Dattinen?
Well, I did see that video, and he did call for verification from the statement of polls, and he was right when he said that it must only be done from the statement of polls. But Mr. Granger also made that statement, and it was repeated by one of the local newspapers today, that exactly what Mr. Granger had said then, and there is a video as well of Mr. Granger saying, echoing those sentiments. Now, these are not complicated things. You see, I agree with Larry that the position is you have to be transparent, and transparent is not what I say or you say or anybody says. Transparent is when you do things to the satisfaction of the stakeholders that are involved, when they feel that what you are doing is not intended to subvert the process. It's not intended to sideline the security and the guarantees that are put in there so that they are checks and balances. What has been apparent is that the APNU AFC are saying, well, okay, we have done it. You don't like it that we have done it, then too bad. And that's been the sentiment that has been echoed repeatedly. We have people from all over the world. The high commissioners, the ambassadors who are in Guyana have all said the poll lacks credibility and no one should be sworn in based on it. But why would you go repeatedly to try to subvert a process? Guyana has a dark past of the PNC, which is part of the APNU coalition, a dark past of them subverting the will of the people. They rigged the elections for a very long time. We thought those days were behind us. Now the fear is that those days are upon us. And speaking for myself, I was there all the time. Those days are here. And that's what the attempt is. The attempt is to use information that is selective, that use information that appears to be manufactured, because no one knows where it came from. When we asked about the spreadsheet that was being used for a short period, in fact, no one could say where it came from. No one could say where did the information on that spreadsheet came from. Everyone disavowed it, saying somebody else did it. No one wanted to claim responsibility. Now, GCOM must be better than that. GCOM must deliver. They must be the independent body. And they have been doing it since 1992. But they must be the independent body to say, look, the confidence GCOM has and of the public confidence that GCOM has must be maintained at all costs. So you have to, you can't have a situation where you can't find the press, the ambassadors, the candidates, the commissioners can't find the officers of GCOM. No one knows where they are. They haven't spoken to the press. They have avoided that. We have become accustomed from 1992 that that's a norm. The chairman and the chief elections officer would address the press and would update them what is going on, would tell them what is going on, and it would be, but they're in hiding. That's the only way you could describe it. They're in hiding. Nobody knows where they are. The GCOM commissioners appointed by the PPP have no access to the building. No access. They're not permitted inside. On Thursday night, Mr. Saif Gunraj was evicted by 16 armed policemen. He's a commissioner in GCOM. And he was there. The law says he's entitled to be there. And he was evicted from the building. These are not things that are normal. These are things that are really serious, that undermine the process, that undermine public confidence. But the APNU AFC party doesn't seem to care. whether
Right.
public confidence is undermined, and they are unconcerned whether the process is being subverted or not, as long as it's being done in a way that they want it to be done. To
So
have two
let me
candidates,
ask let me ask both you.
represent GCOM is
Mhm.
is difficult to accept that there is independence.
Right. So let me ask you and Mr. Ramkran. Mr. Ramkran, I want to go with you first. There's been a narrative that's been pushed by a number of persons, including persons from the media, that posits to question the source of the SOPs that ANOG or PPPC or any one of the participating political parties in the process might have. Where did you get your SOPs from is what people are questioning, not recognizing that your SOP has to have the same mark as the original one, doesn't it? Mr. Ramkran, you want to edify us on that process, please? I don't think we're getting Mr. Ramkran's audio. Mr. Dutton, you want to go ahead with that in terms of the questioning, the narrative, sorry, that's being played out for the SOPs?
Well, what has happened is typical of what PR people tell me is the way it would work. What has happened is clearly they're aware that the SOPs that everyone else have would be identical. Those SOPs have the same security features and serial numbers, etc. And what is being said is that everybody has one set of SOPs, is one line. Secondly, what is being said is that the PPP have given their SOPs to everybody. My understanding of what I see in the public domain from the various television interviews is they have all said they don't have all, but they have enough. And GCOM has an idea of how much they have. But what Mr. Jonas had said is for the ones that they went and got off of the doors and things like that, they don't know what they have. GCOM doesn't know what they have. So when he raises one that they have a copy of, they will say, this is what our copy says, if it's different. So the reason why that maintains the integrity of the process is because there are 879 polling stations and there are 879 SOPs. So all the smaller parties might not have all 879. But let's say they have 300 each. They might have different 300s. And they have gone and they have, as they are entitled to do, they have gone and they've taken pictures of the ones that are posted on the building, on the door, on the wall. The law requires that it be posted on a conspicuous place outside, and those pictures they have in their possession, even though they didn't have a polling agent in that station. Now, what they have there, they went and they did because they understand that under Section 839A, that what's posted outside is conclusive evidence of what the count is. So they have accumulated by that. And they are saying that we have these and we can show you the pictures that we took. And this is what we have. But as to the narrative that all of it is somehow colluded or concocted, I don't buy that. And as far as I'm aware, that is not the position. As far as the PPP's SOPs go, they were put on a website since Thursday. And they're public and available to the world at large. If anyone downloads it or anyone takes it from there, I don't know. But my understanding from what I saw and in the conversations I had is those smaller parties, and like Mr. Jonas was saying, that we have some where we had agents, but we have a lot more from where we took the pictures, where we didn't have agents. But they have gone down a path. Other parties have gone down a path with that. I don't know exactly what their position is. But why is
So,
it that APNU believes that everybody will have a statement of poll that's different from them and the returning officer? It raises the inference that they have an idea of what they have and what the returning officer has. And why would
correct.
it be different?
And the
Why would it be
question,
different?
yes, go on. The question is, and Senior Mr. Rankin, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, I think we had a little problem with your audio just now. The question that persons are concerned with is the narrative that has been started that, where did ANO get its statement of polls from, how sacrosanct, how much integrity is there in the PPPC's ISOPs. But the other thing that I wanted to look at very quickly is, where do the international observers get their numbers from?
Well, the statements of polls for both the observers. Remember, we were a group of 3 parties. So we have access not only from what we get, but from what the other 2 parties get. We get access to the reports from other sources, like people in the communities give us the photographs and say, up to now we're collecting statements of poll. For today we've collected a few hundred statements of poll. So that process is going on. But I just think this is a big red herring. It has no meaning. It makes no difference. Our statements of poll correspond, generally speaking, to those that they, in large measure, to those that the PVP has. The differences are very minute. So we are collecting our independent statements of poll. Of course, we don't have 800 plus, but we have a few hundred, and they're all correspond in large measure to what the PVP has. So there's no fake statements of poll anywhere. This is just a red herring started by Gordon Mosley and picked up by the other pro-APNU press. But I want to go back to something that Pastor Williams was saying, and how the process is conducted at the by the returning officer and the deputy returning officers. Since 2001, when the Hamilton case was being heard, Basil Williams was going around saying votes must be counted. And the allegation at that time, I was in those cases. I was in that case, and I believe the Norton case, though I'm not too sure. It was a long time ago, and I don't remember these things in any detail. But I do remember that it was just after the elections in the United States between Bush and Gore, when there's a big problem with the votes in Florida, and there's a big chant that count the votes. So Basil brought that chant down here in 2001, and he was saying all over the place, count the votes, count the votes. And the allegation was that the votes were the same allegation now, that the results were announced from returning officers, by returning officers on the basis of the spreadsheet. Well, that was eventually resolved because the votes, there were no allegations that the votes were not counted from the basis of the statements of poll. You see, what they don't understand, and the judge seemed to not be sure. She said that practice is not the same in every polling place. And Aubrey Norton and the other persons from Region 3 gave also, who gave affidavit evidence, also seem not to be aware of what happens. Both the deputy returning officers and the returning officers, when they count the votes from the statements of poll, they simultaneously enter the results on a spreadsheet. So when the deputy returning officers are finished, they send the statements of poll and the spreadsheet, or a copy of the spreadsheet, to the returning officer. When the returning officer counts the votes from the statements of poll, he or she also simultaneously enter those votes on a spreadsheet. So what the people at the Region 4 did was, in fact, the practice, but they entered fictitious figures. when the chief election officer compiles his register, compiles his report, he compiles it from the spreadsheets that are sent to him by the returning officers and the deputy returning officers. He doesn't count the votes. So that is how it operates, and it's the same system in every place where the votes are compiled, both by the returning officer and the deputy returning officer. The same system. There's no confusion. It's the people who witness the compilation are confused, and they confuse the Chief Justice. And it's what happened in Region 4 where they attempt to perpetrate fraud. I've been in 3 election commissions. None of the chairmen in 92, in 97, and 2001. None of the chairmen disappeared for days, and the chairman had a hands-on process on everything, including people who were not pro-PVP, including Rudy Collins and Joe Singh. These were not PVP people. They were not, whether or not they were supporters of the PVP, I don't know. I doubt it very much. But and Do Not Sing as well, who was a well-known WPA activist and supporter. So that, and all these chairpersons were hands-on, visible, present, and managing the process. Our chairman just vanished, and now is asking for cooperation, having allowed her officers, Mr. Ganraj, to be expelled from Region 4. Well, I don't understand that.
Right. So,
but let me just say something to you.
Sanjeev, just before you go, Sanjeev, just before you continue, sorry to interject into your thought flow. Mr. Lala, I know that you have been very patient, sir. I know you have to go. So thank you for being here. Just give us your final thoughts, but especially from the perspective of an independent person, an attorney of law. I mean, listening to Senior Counsel Ralph Ramkran and also Mr. Datadin, another senior attorney in Guyana. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that there is a hope that we can find a good way forward for political problems?
I think that whether or not there's hope will depend upon GCOM's conduct tomorrow and in maybe the couple days ahead of tomorrow. It is important for them to understand the important role they play in the future of the country. It's not just an election. It's the future of a country, the future of all the peoples of Guyana, all the children of Guyana. Right? They hold the future of all of these interests in their hands, and it's important for GCOM to follow those 3 important goalposts that were set for them by the Chief Justice today, and that is that they must act impartially, they must be fair, and they must comply with the law. Once that is done, Guyana will be all the better for it. But everyone is looking at GCOM. One hopes that perhaps someone from GCOM is looking on this evening and hearing what people are saying about their operations. One would hope that they would try to take pride, and they would see the importance of taking pride in what they do, so that all of Guyana could feel confident that they were well served by GCOM in this election. So a lot will turn up tomorrow. Let's see what happens.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for joining us tonight. And we certainly look forward to your sage advice and company well into the future. On behalf of the Globespan team and our viewers, thank you very much. And do tell the Trinidad government we need their support as well.
Thank you very much. Good night to you. Good night to your listeners, your viewers, and good night to my colleagues, Mr. Datadin and Senior Counsel.
Good night, Mr. Lal.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Sanjeev, sorry I cut into your train of thoughts there.
That's all right. That's all right. What I was saying was this. When the verification to ascertain and the totaling up, which is required under the law of the statement of polls, was being done, when we had finished 421, all those statement of polls were in bags in the room that everybody was sitting. It was over on one side by itself. Mr. Mingo came and he tried to make a declaration, and we all said no. Then he went away. He came back later at 2 p.m. that day when he said that what he read from the balcony was a declaration. Those statement of polls, because we were still in the building with the observers and with everyone, never moved. So what did he total up? He was supposed to be totaling those statement of polls. They never moved. And he can't say he used someone else's copy. The law requires that he does the returning officer's copy that are sent to him. So he clearly didn't do that. I saw that someone wrote in one of the local newspapers a letter to say that he delivered fantasy numbers. And that is an accurate description. It was fantasy numbers. It was numbers that were entirely made up. But these things are so easy. The legislation, the process, the procedures, it is so easy to do because of the checks and balances that are provided. Everybody has a statement of poll. Every counting agent has one. So it's not difficult for you to be able to confirm, this is what my numbers are, this is what your numbers are. This went on for 421 statement of polls. Why did you just interrupt the process and evict people from the building?
Right.
The fear is that GCOM did that so that they could have access to the statement of polls. And that's what's worrying everyone.
That's the problem, isn't it, Sanjeev? Mr. Ramkaran, that is a genuine concern that has been expressed by all the political parties, yours included, the integrity of the statement of polls after you were all ejected.
That's a big problem. One, we don't know what has happened to the statement of poll. They've ejected everybody. It was on camera when the few people who were guarding the statement of poll were representatives of political parties, were begging the police to allow them to remain in the room to keep an eye on the statements of poll in the presence of the police, so nobody can do anything. The police eventually ejected them. So, having regard to what they have done or what they attempted to do, I would not be surprised that if they have attempted to tamper with the statements of poll. Now, it will clearly show because the signatures will not be the same. It would be difficult for them to get all those presiding officers down to Georgetown to sign the statements of poll. So they'll have to forge the signatures of everybody, including the PVP and other representatives. But that wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't or forge the numbers, interfere with the numbers. So
what remedy? What remedy do you both see if you find that, okay, by tomorrow evening, next day, this is going nowhere? What then?
Well, they will have to go to court again. You know what they've done is they rejected all the counting agents, including the PVP's counting agents. They rejected everybody for some serious reason. So there's nobody to request a recount of the count. There's nobody to request a recount. So we're in very great difficulty. They will have to, if there is tampering with the statements of poll, they'll have to go to court again.
Okay. So there's, yes, go on.
Yeah, to abort the process.
Okay. And then what? So you will go from the you will go to court to ask. Yeah. Okay. So right. So that's the solution then. So you're gonna go to the court, but wouldn't the court say, well, we cannot intercede anymore? Now you could file an election petition.
No, the results are the same principle will apply. The results are not out as yet. If it is clear from 100 statements of poll that the statements of poll have been tampered with, that the results have been scratched out and different figures added, then it is clear that something is wrong, and you can go on the basis that you've gone this time, that the results are not yet declared, and therefore you can interrupt the process. You don't have to go by election petition. Well, the argument will be the same.
Okay. So, Mr. Dartidin, do you concur with senior opinion there?
Well, there's always a challenge as to what the election petition is about, the counting, and everything else falls outside of an election petition. There is a reluctance at times um, from what judges will or will not interfere with. Whether it's by election petition or otherwise, the scenarios and what we have been discussing this evening, I have no doubt that Senior is right. It's going to end up in the courts again. And this was entirely uncalled for. GCOM should be an independent body. And that independent body owes a duty to the people of Guyana, to the citizens of Guyana, to make sure that they conduct a proper process, a transparent, fair process. But they seem unconcerned about that. Senior is right. The chairman cannot be found except to issue statements that are really not statements of any effect. Why wouldn't she face the press? Say where you've been. Say why it is you've taken this long. This is not the way that a transparent organization works. But I don't think they're concerned about that.
Right. And what will now in terms of the 11 o'clock restart tomorrow? As you both have said, it's up to the RO to decide whether you're neither here nor there whether he restarts or he continues the process. Is your respective party prepared now to go in another long haul? And what would you do if the returning officer say, well, I don't want all of you guys here. I want one person from each party, or I will accommodate only one. What would you countenance that with that?
Well, I don't know about in.
As long as you're allowed to be present. What they were doing before is they were saying two persons from each party were allowed to be there. Might not be ideal, but at least you're allowed to be present and you're allowed to witness what is going on. Now, you have to understand, it means two people in the room. Now, the room is a glass room, so everyone can see inside, and there are spaces outside of that room. So other persons can be there, as has been norm of what has been happening in the initial stages, where they would have persons there to relieve the ones that are in the room doing the work, because it's, they've been exchanging. It's a volunteer system, quite unlike GCOM, which has taken $7 billion from the Treasury to have enough people to do what the job that they need to do.
Right. Senior, you were saying, sorry.
Well, I'm saying that there will be no counting agents because none of the parties have counting agents. So there will only be the candidates who are entitled to be there. There will be no possibility of seeking a recount because only the counting agents can do so. So the parties would have one person each, and would be severely hampered in being able to do their oversight process.
Okay. And the other big question that viewers have sent in, Mr. Datin, I want to come to you first with this one, is, all of this big hullabaloo about the integrity of the PPP's statement of polls, when the biggest coalition in the country's history and maybe in the Caribbean has just refused to even release any respectable amount, if any at all, of its own statement of polls.
But this is what I don't understand. If you're saying that what the PPP have produced is not accurate, and you produce yours and say this is why they're not accurate, but that's not going to happen. You see, the publication of the statement of polls by the PPP was to show everyone this is what we have. It wasn't to do anything else, because we have nothing to hide. And if you have nothing to hide, you're unconcerned about disclosing what you have. Now, the the APNU is saying that they have it and that it's different. Well, let's see what you have.
Right.
Publish it the same way that everyone has done. But
Right.
the fear will be that whatever APNU will produce in the future, in the coming days, will be identical to what GCOM has. And that's where the process has been undermined. But
Correct.
time will tell. Maybe what will happen is that that's not going to be the position. Maybe the visiting prime ministers from CARICOM will broker some form of a deal or an arrangement where it will be understood that maybe the process should go to the ballot.
Right.
And the ballot
So-
boxes should be counted and everyone's ballot should be counted so that there's satisfaction.
Correct. Correct. Because it really doesn't take away anything from the government continue running the country until such a time, right?
Well, the president remains in place. I know all of the ministers, the former ministers, because that's what they are. I know they've all been performing as if they are. They're still using government vehicles. They're still using government offices as if there's nothing. But when Parliament was dissolved, who are these ministers really reporting to? And the executive is vacant. The president remains as the de facto president. But nobody else is supposed to remain.
Senior, I would like your comment on that same point that Mr. Datidin has spoken about, but I want to, with respect to the years you have spent not just in legal practice, Senior, but in politics itself, one could imagine what you might be thinking after the years of struggle to bring about free and fair election, to get us to a place where we have open SOPs, and then to come up with the debacle that we are currently in.
Well, I'm very distressed because the first thought that came to me is that I started my adult life, working life, having to struggle to get free and fair elections, and it looked as if I will die with living in a country with rigged elections. I mean, I was very sad about that possibility. We have an opening now, and I hope that the ballots have not been rigged now.
Right.
So that I can go to rest eventually peacefully.
Well, we hope that's not anytime soon, Senior. Gentlemen, I would like to really thank both of you for being here tonight. Sanjeev, I would want to come to you first and then Senior Counsel last. In terms of your final thoughts, the process, and what can viewers look out for from tomorrow, hopefully.
Well, this process didn't go smoothly in Region 4, and that might be an understatement. The process has been subjected at every stage to interference, to pervert the process, to undermine the will of the people. What I hope comes out of all of this and over the next few days is that the will of the people to choose their leaders is respected. Whatever needs to be done should be done. We can't use the laws and technical interpretations or fanciful interpretations to invent things. That's not right. I mean, the process that the country has been in since the no confidence motion has brought it to its knees. There is so much promised to Guyana, but none of it is being realized by Guyanese. And the reason for that is there is no leadership. There is all that is taken over our lives is politics. All that has taken over business and the economy is politics. Everyone is waiting to see what will happen. And this requires GCOM to do the job that they take all that money to do, not to subvert the process. A former Justice of Appeal is the head of GCOM, and she ought to know better.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder when she said, not for all the oil in Guyana. Then what was it for?
Right.
As they said, for whales.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Dattinen, thank you so much for joining us tonight with your comments and your sage advice as to the processes and the interpretation, of course, of Madam Chief Justice's decisions. We certainly look forward to your continued presence with us on other platforms as we will, give coverage to what's happening in Guyana. Mr. Ramkaran, I would like
Thank
to.
you very much.
You're most
Thank you to
welcome,
your
sir.
viewers and your listeners, and good night.
Good night. Mr. Ramkaran,
Good night,
I would like to come to you for some closing comment. But before we go to the closing comments, sir, there's a video online for younger viewers who would not have known the history. That Burnham, many, many, many years ago, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, said to the world that you cannot interfere with our electoral processes. You keep mind your own business. And today we are seeing that narrative again. In addition, Senior, I want to harken back to around 2012, 2013, or 2014, thereabout. Mr. David Granger, then opposition leader, said of the then president of Guyana that the president was sleepwalking into a constitutional nightmare. We have seen over the past year that the narrative has slowly but surely turned right back around, where the incumbent has sleepwalked into a constitutional nightmare with the NCM, but that now the narrative has gone back to where we are telling the world, mind your own business. Senior, your comments, please, because you have fought a lifelong battle, and a lot of the battle has been to bring the world to our doors to ensure there is free and fair election.
Well, while we have been fighting the Burnham dictatorship for free and fair elections and against other authoritarian practices, the world has changed. The world has slowly and gradually changed, and human rights have assumed a greater importance in the foreign policy of countries. And in particular, human rights in the international organizations like the United Nations, and in the foreign policy of big countries like European countries, the European Union, in Britain, and in the United States. And free and fair elections is an integral aspect of human rights. And since Burnham's time, the policy of overseeing elections, of having foreign observers to elections, is very common, is a common practice now. Whereas in the past, Burnham would never have dreamed of allowing such a situation, and that would have been more or less the practice. Now it's a completely different story. So the Burnham policy of not allowing, of telling people to mind their own business no longer applies. Even Granger couldn't tell people that. All he could say was that I have nothing to do with the Elections Commission, that the Election Commission is an independent body, which we know is ludicrous. So we are in a different situation now, and the PNC cannot easily get away with what they have been doing. There are dozens of countries have already made public statements calling upon the government to allow the process to be completed, have said that the results announced are not credible and that the process must be credible. And this must be having an impact on the government. I hope it is. And they will not get up to further skullduggery in relation to Region 4. I do hope that they have got the message. That's
Right.
all I can say.
Well, Senior, thank you so much, and we certainly look forward to your continued sage advice too as we continue to examine the process for the viewers across Guyana and across the world. I must tell you that tonight we were joined by people from Ireland, the UK, Canada, US, and across the Caribbean, of course, and many of them have expressed on our comment section and of course by inbox their appreciation of yourself and Mr. Sanjeev Dattinen and Mr. Lala's the way you handle and explain some of these legal matters. Sir, thank you so very much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
And to our viewers out there, it's been wonderful having you in our program tonight. We will continue to ensure that you are updated as things happen in country. Tonight, we are fortunate to have Mr. Ralph Ramkran, Senior Counsel in Guyana, Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin, another very senior person in the legal community in Guyana, and Mr. Larry Lala from Trinidad and Tobago, an attorney at law that would have served across the Caribbean and even in North America and Britain. Viewers, let me close our program tonight by expressing thanks to Devin Bisu, Nohar Singh, and the Globespan team for doing the great job they're doing. But to remind all of you out there, it is not just elections that concern us at this time. We're all concerned about the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus that has already had one fatality in Guyana. One person died today from the virus. Please let us all, let us all live with caution. Be very, very careful, about washing hands, about maintaining certain types of hygiene. Let us look out for the flyers. We will be sharing some tonight. I'll be sharing them on my personal page. Globespan will be sharing some of them too. We are hoping to share along with PAHO WHO, what would be some of the measures we can undertake for our own protection. But please fortify yourself with natural vitamin C. Please ensure that you keep whatever you need to keep at home. Remember, the disease is transmitted in a number of ways, but most particularly that has to do with direct transmission, person to person, bodily fluids and stuff like that. Please be extremely cautious and careful, and please let us all remember to wash our hands. Tonight, knowing that it's, handshakes might be one of the things that it's going to transmit when I do not shake your hand, but tonight I say good evening, assalamu alaikum, and namaste to you. As I spread the message, let us all be careful. Let us all please watch out and watch out for each other, because this dangerous disease is in Guyana. And I'm not talking about politics and elections, but I'm talking about the coronavirus. Have a good night. Be safe, everyone. God bless, and do say a prayer for Guyana. Good night, everyone.